You know, sometimes I come here and I just want to stand here for a minute and just look around. So I'm going to do that. So in the book, The Little Prince, are you familiar with it? Probably most of you are, but if not, it's a great book. All right, in the book, The Little Prince, there's a point in the story when the little prince says this thing about grown-ups. When you tell them that you have made a new friend, they never ask you any questions about essential matters. They never say to you, what does his voice sound like? Or what games does he love to play best? Or does he collect butterflies? Instead, they demand, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? What is his father doing? How much money does his father make? And only from these figures do they think they have learned anything about him. Fred Rogers, good old Mr. Rogers, said one of my favorite things. He said, life is deep and simple, and what our society gives us is shallow and complicated. Modern life does a really effective job of, I'm speaking now for me, it does a really effective job of keeping me on the surface of things. And depth requires stillness. The constant doingness that we're sold and we're kind of maneuvered into from a very early age, that constant doingness can become almost addictive. And like any addiction, because this is the thing with any addiction, and basically anything can be addictive, it always fills us with the desire for some unattainable state that we will forever chase, even unto death. So in my time as a hospice chaplain, one of the things many patients struggled with as they moved towards the end of their life was this stillness that came upon them, and this not always doing, because they've been doing all their lives, always doing. Because so much of who they think of themselves as is associated with roles and careers, titles, professions. To no longer be able to do those things called their very sense of self into question. Does that make sense? They were ill-prepared, as I believe most of us probably are, to allow this stillness, because their sense of self, how they identified who they were, was gone. Now that's the invitation, and that's the gift in the ugly wrapping paper, in my opinion. That happens. And we don't have to wait till the end to get there. All right, it is a basic human desire to want to feel in control. I mean, who doesn't want to be secure and comfortable? I know I do. Patterns and routines help me feel that way. Plus, I don't have to expend much energy thinking about things if I believe I already know, and I have my habits and patterns. And you know, I can be a little OCD. You could ask my wife about that. You know, there's certain rituals, and you know, you get kind of married to certain things. Anyway, on our way to constructing our life to be what we believe or hope will be a safe and knowable place, we may find that we've become very much like the adults the little prince is talking about. And before we know it, we're actually sleepwalking and in a sleepwalking state. We think we're awake, but we're not. Now, sidebar here. I'm talking about me. I'm not saying this is true for you, but I'm talking about me. I know, I can say from experience, that has been the fact many times. And I'm saying to you what I've learned from some of the people I've served in 25 years as a hospice worker, because we talked about life. You want to get into deep conversations with people sometimes? It's a good opportunity. So, again, I'm speaking about me when I say that. Sleepwalking. And unfortunately, sometimes you don't pay attention or wake up until something really bad happens. That was the case for me. I'm not going to go into that. I don't need to go into that. But I stand here before you today because of something that happened 35 years ago that I never would have wanted to happen. So, before sometimes we know we're in a sleepwalking state, something either jarring will happen collectively or in your own life. And that is an opportunity to wake up. It doesn't mean you're going to wake up, but it's an opportunity. At least get your attention. Being on autopilot, repeating patterns, confusing belief for knowledge, that's what I'm talking about, at least in my case. I thought I knew a lot of things and was really scared to realize how much I didn't know. So how do we regain the ability to cut through all the BS and all the superficial stuff that is constantly being thrown our way and distractions? How do we dive deeper? Do we want to dive deeper? So, philosopher and author Jean Houston writes, and I'm going to quote her here, "As an individual, you are unique in your themes, the great patterns which arise recurrently like waves on the sea of your life, waves that you can either ride or be ravaged by. These repeating themes and patterns are calls to wake up, and they're gifts which, if acknowledged and unfolded, allow us to see the bigger picture of our lives. And there's always a bigger picture. And if they are followed, they give us our role as co-creators with life and the universe. These patterns will help you to discover who and what you are going to be when you really grow up." All right, that's the end of the quote. So regardless of whether or not you consider yourself to be a grown-up, I have questions for myself. A lot of times I'm pretty in touch with the 6 or 7-year-old me. And I like that kid. Anyway, so I challenge you to focus more on essential matters in your life, both in your daily interactions with others, even in emails or social media posts, and in regard to yourself. I challenge you to take some time to determine what some of those essential matters are. Not only in regard to who you are now, right in this moment, but even more importantly, in regard to who you hope to become. Because in truth, we are all in a constant state of becoming. We're leaving what we've been to become what we're to be, and we're in between. That's the idea of liminal space. You're between two different things. So we're all in the state of becoming, and when you're aware of this, you get to choose what it is that we are becoming. Does that make sense? I like to check in to see if it makes sense to you, because if it doesn't, let's stop. All right, this is essential as well. So I'd like to give you a suggestion, a simple practice for focusing on your own essential matters, because I don't know what they are. I can't. You have to know what they are. So Choose someone. It can be a friend or a colleague, or it can be a stranger. And I challenge you to talk to them in person, and do not allow the conversation to simply float upon the surface. I mean, sometimes you got to be there first before you dive. But push it deeper by asking questions that matter and that inspire compelling and compassionate responses. Ask about their favorite places in the world, or in their homes or their yards. Ask about the best thing that ever happened to them. Ask about the objects that they possess that mean the most to them. The books, the movies that they love, or maybe change their life in some way. Don't be satisfied with simple answers to these questions. Ask them why these things matter. If I learned anything in the years working with hospice, is taking time to ask someone and then listen to them. Remarkable things emerge. It's a sacred act to listen to someone and pay attention. I had a man that was instrumental in changing the course of my life. And he's the one that led me to hospice, because he wound up on hospice. And I saw how they cared for him. And he was one that was always saying to me when I was ruminating on my problems, get out of yourself, go help another human being, be of service somewhere. So that was kind of his philosophy. And when he was on hospice and I'd go over to visit him and he'd ask me what was going on, and I'd start to yabber on, he'd stop me, he said, I don't have time for bullshit. He said, what's really going on? So I go into what was really going on. He wanted to know. And what a remarkable thing that was, that he wanted. It wasn't about him at that point. He wanted to know what was up with me. So I passed that story on to you because I never forgot it. And that man's death led me to go into hospice and become a volunteer and so forth. And I got to have conversations with people in the same way. And even in that awful time of life, there's a lot of light to be found. And when people are able to actually unpack some of their life and find some meaning in it, it makes the way a little bit easier. So, as I said, one of the most important aspects of that job for me as a hospice chaplain was not in giving people answers, because I didn't do that. Or saying prayers, because I generally didn't do that, unless it really made a difference. If someone had requested, fine. But I wasn't there to do that. I wasn't there to proselytize or save their soul or anything else. I was there to witness their life and listen to them tell their story, because we all have stories, and stories are important, and they're important to be honored and respected, and sometimes they're important to be let go of too, because the story we tell ourselves can always be edited. So, waking up, to me, is an essential matter. And I'm not there by any means. I have moments where I see something clearly, or I have moments of unbidden joy. I'm going out to the compost and I'm walking back to the house and I see the clouds and I see something and I just realize, oh my God, this is beautiful. And that's an unbidden joy. And I acknowledge it. And then, a moment later, I'm back in the soup in my mind, whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Waking up is our task, and in my opinion, it is our only hope. I'm speaking collectively. It's our only hope. We are intricately connected to and with each other in ways that are beyond our ability to understand, and to all of life. So when even just one of us changes, becomes more aware, more loving, more kind, more compassionate, or happy, that's important. Everything else is affected. Everything. Even reality itself. The degree that this occurs may not be easily measurable, but it is real. There's a principle called quantum entanglement. There's all kinds of thoughts about that, but the essence of what that is seems to play out pretty well, and they've been able to prove it. And it's just that once one particle is connected to another, no matter how far the distance they're separated, each affects the other's spin. So, taking that idea to its seemingly logical conclusion, if the universe began with a Big Bang, then everything started out connected. And if so, then when one thing changes, well, you know where I'm going with this. I'm not going to beat it to death here. That's my thought about it. So, as we've heard, you hear things like, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one footstep. I mean, that's kind of what they're talking about here. That's the greatest changes start with sometimes the tiniest things. So, I encourage you to try this practice every chance you get. Even if the world doesn't immediately change, because it's not going to. You probably will. And as a really wise person said to me a long time ago, time takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes it's imperceptible, but you'll find, like I found going out to the compost the other day, that unbidden joy, something comes in. You see with different eyes, with newer eyes, And that's available to all of us. It's available from the beginning of this life, and part of what we're called to do in its beginning all the way up to the end, as far as I can see. I don't know what some of those people I was with saw at the last moment, with their last breath, but I was with enough people, and a few of them seemed to be pretty happy with what they were seeing. And I've noticed the same thing too. I have 3 children, and I remember when they were really little, and they would be looking at things. You never see that with an infant, in a crib or something else, and they get fixed on it. I'm not seeing anything there, but they're seeing something. So there's a lot more going on than we can see. I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there. That's it. I want to thank you all for listening. It's a great pleasure. And to all of you, the idea that it's Mother's Day it can be a loaded thing, but it's also a wonderful thing. And we are each capable of being mothers to ourselves too, which is giving birth to something more. And the strength that takes, and it takes a lot of strength. So, thank you. And I'm going to, what do I do now? I know what I do.